Oh, hi. My name is Gina, and I wanted to call to just say thank you to the Lincoln Project for always representing the integrity and the truth of what democracy really means. I'm from the state of Oregon, and fortunately we don't have any of the problems in voter suppression in our state, but I'm all for helping in any way I can with postcards, emails to get out the knowledge base to stop the voter suppression in what's happening, and hopefully we can overturn the filibuster too. Thank you so much.
Trump and his minions, the NRA and their friends, have no place in public office. They have shown an utter contempt for the American people, for men, for women, for Asians, for blacks, Latinos, anybody who is not one of them. That's not America. That's a perversion of this country. And they want to try to continue this perversion, continue to lie to people, continue to mislead that he won the election, continue this lie. It just gets me madder and madder and madder. I think that we as responsible citizens have to take action to make sure that they no longer hold public office by voting them out of office and by silencing Donald Trump, keeping him off social media and ignoring him.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I respect the Lincoln Project so much for everything that they've done. I've been with you since the beginning. Keep fighting for our democracy because you're on the right side of history, and this is very important.
Welcome to LPTV's We're Speaking. I'm Lisa Senecal.
And I'm Maya May. Every Wednesday, we're speaking with you about the most pressing issues facing our country, but with a twist. Our focus is the impact those issues have on women and on raising up the voices of women making real, lasting change and progress.
You know, in a wealthy, well-resourced society like the one we live in, one of our really pressing issues should not be safety. And we're seeing far too many reasons to remind us that safety is a constant concern for all of us. Gun violence, domestic violence, and the merging of the two is something we're going to be talking about tonight. And also domestic violence is a warning sign for the possibility that somebody is going to commit larger acts of domestic terrorism. We've seen that with so many of the people who have done this in the past. We have a couple of statistics that we want to share with you. The World Health Organization finds 1 in 3 women have been subjected to physical or sexual violence in their lifetimes.
The numbers are alarming. The Council on Criminal Justice reports domestic violence, emotional abuse increased more than 8% in the United States during the pandemic. You know, the numbers are so alarming that we often forget they represent real people. And so it's important to put a face to a statistic. I am a survivor, and we're everywhere. Your coworkers, neighbors, friends, and family. And we often suffer in silence because we often don't have a choice. And the CDC reports nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. You know, called a pandemic within a pandemic, domestic violence surged in the past year, with the most vulnerable cut off from resources and support. We need better policies. We need protection, which is why we are enormously grateful to have as a guest Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, author and sponsor of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act.
Maya, as you said, you and I know through our work with domestic violence organizations. You're on a domestic violence committee. I'm on a board, and both of our personal experiences that the face of domestic violence doesn't look like any particular face. It looks like every face you can possibly imagine. And we're going to speak with a survivor tonight. Our second guest tonight is Kristen Speller. She's an award-winning singer-songwriter and entrepreneur. She donates her skills, products, and time to helping survivors of domestic violence, something that she knows well from her personal experience in an abusive relationship. We're honored to have her share her journey with us tonight.
And this week, we ask you to share your thoughts about the Violence Against Women Act as it faces hurdles from NRA-backed senators. Words matter, and we know that Trump's past rhetoric has put women and Asian Americans in danger. And we asked if you had a message for him about these horrible attacks. And you can still also give us a ring at 646-374-8339 and leave us your thoughts, or tweet us using hashtag We're Speaking, or leave us a comment on Facebook.
Now we're really excited to get to our first guest this evening. The Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee is serving her 14th term representing the 18th Congressional District in Texas, which is the Houston area. Her district is apparently rather fond of the Congresswoman, as the lowest share of re-election votes she has ever received is a mere 70%. She is a senior member of the House Committees on the Judiciary and Homeland Security, and was appointed by the leadership as a member of the all-important Budget Committee. Among so many notable accomplishments for Representative Lee is her membership in the first graduating class from Yale University to include women, where she didn't just earn a BA in political science. She, of course, earned it with honors, followed by a JD from the University of Virginia Law School. Her work on common sense gun measures date back to 1989, and probably earlier than that, when she served on the Houston City Council. And she has also been a passionate leader working for the reauthorization and strengthening of the Violence Against Women Act.
It is a culturally sensitive initiative that protects immigrant women. It protects Native Americans. It protects poor women. It provides legal assistance to all persons. And it has a culturally responsive and consistent outreach through culturally assisted focus in dealing with these women. It is based on prevention and intervention and protecting those against the perpetrators with guns who are their intimate partners.
And the Congresswoman is here with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and welcome to We're Speaking, Congresswoman Lee.
Thank you so very much for having me. Lisa and Maya, it's very good to be with you this evening. Thank you.
It is. Oh, you're
Yes,
so
of
welcome.
course. Yes, we're grateful.
Honored to have you here, truly. So despite your tireless work and commitment to the Violence Against Women Act, it languished without reauthorization during the previous administration. I'm very happy to say that last week, with your leadership, it passed the House and it's headed to the Senate. Can you just explain to our viewers who aren't familiar with the Violence Against Women Act why it's so important to you and to all women, and what new provisions are in the reauthorization to make it stronger?
This is a survivor's bill. HR 1620 speaks the language of survivors. It has listened to survivors over the years, and we have heard from the survivors in complete astonishment and outrage that this bill has not been reauthorized since 2013. It has an expiration date of 5 years after each reauthorization. It was to be reauthorized in 2018. We dutifully rewrote it. It was ready to go, but was blocked, unfortunately, by the dominant Republican leadership at that time. And it continued to be blocked all through the Trump administration. So here we are with a breath of fresh air, and the survivors are saying, now is their time. This is a comprehensive bill, and I thank you for those statistics. I think we should know that there are 10 million people a year in America that face domestic violence, 15 million children exposed to domestic violence. The violent weapon of choice, of course, is guns. And obviously, our guns. And obviously, as I speak to you tonight, let me offer my deepest sympathy to the 8 people killed in Atlanta, 6 of them Asian American women, and of course, the 10 that were killed in Boulder, Colorado, with guns. So this bill focuses on increasing provisions, monetary provisions for rape prevention and intervention, $110 million, $60 million more than it had before. We focus on, as I indicated earlier, culturally sensitive outreach to Native American women, to immigrant women, to economically poor women. And we make sure that there are culturally assistance in small organizations that can help them. We have intervention for men and boys to try and alter their thinking. We've changed the housing, which has been notorious when your name was not on the lease or not on the mortgage. It was the victim, the survivor, that was kicked out of the place of residence, even with his or her children. It is gender neutral, but the housing provision now says that it is the perpetrator, the abuser, that has to leave, and the victim, the survivor, can stay, and to provide them with the protection that they need. And of course, it closes the gun show loophole, which is that if you're convicted of sexual assault or stalking on a misdemeanor, you can't buy or transfer a gun. Of course, that has caught the ire of the NRA, and that has been one of the ways that our friends, I'll say our friends on the other side of the aisle, have dominated the discussion to suggest that VAWA should not pass. But let me be very clear. This was a bipartisan bill. I want to thank the Republican members in the House that supported it. And I'm going to march right over to the Senate with the leadership of the Senate in the hands of Chuck Schumer and Chairman Durbin. We're going to work very hard to pass this bill, and it gets signed by the President of the United States, who I have called the father of VAWA, Joe Biden.
This is excellent. And I love that you call it a survivor's bill, that it's in survivor's language, because it truly is. It's a very responsive bill as you've continued to rewrite and evolve it. Now, prior to an abrupt change in 2019, the Department of Justice website described domestic violence as physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats or actions. Right now it reads misdemeanor or felony act of violence. Why is it important to have a clear definition of what constitutes domestic violence? And is this definition too limiting?
No, I think it's important because this is a federal law that governs all 50 states. We don't want the confusion of state law to provide women with no place of refuge. So the federal government will define it that if in a state it is a act of violence that could be considered under a misdemeanor complaint, it is still a act of violence that the VAWA provisions of support can be provided for that survivor. And so the definitions are very important because these actions happen all over the nation. They may be in a certain state a misdemeanor, or they may be a felony. God forbid they're a felony. Maybe the survivor has not survived, if you will. And so what we're trying to do is to get ahead of actions that the abuser might be engaged in, to make sure that the woman or the man is covered by the Violence Against Women Act. And so those definitions are extremely important.
I really appreciate that you are consciously including men both as potential survivors of domestic violence, but also that this reauthorization is focusing on men and boys on the prevention side, because we pay so much attention and it's worthy attention to caring for people when they are survivors. But if we can get upstream and prevent it from happening, that's obviously the best case. Another one of the things that this reauthorization does is to expand protections for LGBTQ folk. Can you talk to us about how the reauthorization really does focus on the people on the margins of society?
Thank you so very much. We wrote that when we first wrote this bill for reauthorizing in 2018. And again, that was what we thought was simply human decency. These are human beings who love and are loved. These are human beings who ultimately can be victims of very devastating violence. And if you think about a Violence Against Women Act, you should be thinking about vulnerable communities. So it is not only the LGBTQ, but it is the Indigenous persons, Native Americans, who also were brutalized because the laws were inadequate to protect them. Actions of rape and abuse could occur on an Indian reservation or Pueblo, and the perpetrator could leave and not be prosecuted at all because they could not be prosecuted outside of the reservation or Pueblo, and that could be where they would flee. So we thought of making sure that anyone who suffered this abuse would be protected by this law. What is a law? A law should be equally attributed to all of the violators of such. It should be equal justice, not injustice. And the Violence Against Women Act ignores opponents who speak to their dislike of certain communities. We recognize that if it's the law of the land of the United States, it must be applicable to all who are violated, who are abused, who are suffering violence in whatever form it is, and who are eligible to be covered, I'm sure, to their dismay, eligible to be covered by the Violence Against Women Act. We do not want to deny anyone who's been abused. And what we're trying to do is to save lives. This is a comprehensive initiative that focuses on saving lives. Again, it is the speech of the survivor. It is the language of the survivor. This particular legislation, 1620, HR 1620.
Inclusivity is such a big piece of this legislation, and with the new administration, insisting on looking at everything through an equity lens, it's really nice to hear that these efforts are happening. Can you describe some of the hurdles? That way our listeners, our viewers can understand some of the hurdles that are faced when trying to include inclusivity in a bill like this?
Wow. People's prejudices get in the way of the goodness of the bill and what the purpose of the bill is. As I said, to protect vulnerable people. And vulnerable people come in different backgrounds, cultural histories, ethnicities, racial backgrounds, sexual orientation. Um, it is a question of whether or not you have been uh, violated, abused, raped, stalked. And if you have suffered domestic violence, which, as you've indicated in the early part of the show, the numbers have exponentially grown in the pandemic. People have been in close quarters. We have tragically had some very violent acts occur, even in our own community, where a police officer lost his life for a domestic violence call, trying to protect the survivor who had called many times. This legislation cannot suffer people's distractions or suffer their biases. This legislation must be comprehensive. And so the hurdles are that when we're debating, then someone will raise how comprehensive it is, what groups we're covering, and whether those groups should be covered. Why is there language about gun transfer, gun purchases in this legislation? Why? Because guns kill, and guns have killed these individuals who have been the victims of violence. That is why it's in the bill. So there are hurdles in terms of the bill passing. For example, one of the amendments on the floor in our debate was, let's just keep the same old bill we had some 9 years ago. Let's just pass that one again, because they did not want it to be a comprehensive bill. They didn't want it to be the language of survivors, the voice of survivors. And that's what HR 1620 is. And so we will continue to fight as we go to the Senate. We're delighted, as I said, to have the leadership of Leader Schumer and the leadership of Chairman Durbin, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. We believe they will be welcoming of the VAWA legislation, and we'll work with them to pass it out of the Senate for the President of the United States to sign.
Getting back to, it's hard to get away from talking about gun violence in this bill and pretty much anywhere else right now. But one of the provisions in this reauthorization is to close the boyfriend loophole. Can you talk to us about what that is? And there was also an amendment that was put on the floor to use funds in VAWA to train women on how to use guns, with the goal of arming more women as a somehow bizarre idea for solving domestic violence. That went down, but do you expect to see something like that on the Senate side? And can you talk to us about what the boyfriend loophole is?
Well, first of all, it's tragic that in these very difficult times when victims are suffering, that there would be actions that really take away from, again, what did I say? That this is the language of the survivor. And in doing so, I would just simply say, tragically, the argument of those supported by the NRA is that someone with a gun could stop someone with a gun. And most law enforcement and others will tell you that is not frequent. It does not happen. Mostly the victim winds up being the victim. And so this amendment was, of course, to distract from the value of this bill in assuring that the victim could be protected and the person who committed the violence would be forbidden from getting the gun. They wanted to act like they were defending women by having women defend themselves. And in many instances, women are defenseless because they're trying to protect their children, and they don't want to have their children in the line of gunfire. And many times that has happened. And both the victim and his or her children have lost their lives. Closing the boyfriend loophole is, of course, to cover the gun purchase and gun transfer to boyfriends as well. And so it is not just the significant partner that you may live with, but it may be the boyfriend who also is covered under the Violence Against Women Act. And I think that is very important. We use terminology such as significant other that is not a legal term. And so we have included the fact that this individual can also be defined as a boyfriend, and they have to be subjected to the governance of HR 1620 or the Violence Against Women Act, and as well be forbidden from purchasing a gun or transferring a gun for their sexual violence against the survivor or against the victim.
It's unfortunate how often gun violence is something that plagues the home, and I shudder at the notion that gun training is something that is required to protect women. I don't want to have a gun in the home at all, and I think I'm really loved hearing about the piece of this legislation that is about training boys now in young men, so that this isn't something that we can attack it from that end. Is this funding that will be available to local organizations and programs? How would that be administered?
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that particular aspect of the bill to the attention of the viewers. And before I just mention that, let me, you at the early part, you brought up my commitment to guns, and we're not talking about guns, maybe we'll do that later, but as an early member of the Houston City Council, I offered the first gun bill that I think the city of Houston had ever seen. And it brings to mind because it's the same kind of opposition that we're getting for this bill, and people dressed up as patriots and attacked us for violating the Second Amendment. This is the kind of opposition you get when you're trying to do good. In this bill, we attempted to do good in many ways, which included giving local community groups the opportunity to implement programs in intervening with men and boys in their attitudes toward girls and women. And we're proud of that and look forward to local communities having the ability to apply to the Department of Justice for these grants in order to promote programs that will teach boys and men and girls and women the understanding of what each other's dignity is all about and how to reconcile differences without violence and without beating either, if you will, but in particular, the dominant victim has been women.
Well, I am so happy that is a piece of this bill, not only because I have two sons, but also one of our very first guests that we had when we launched this show was Ted Bunch, who is one of the co-founders of A Call to Men, which is an organization that is dedicated to eradicating violence against women and girls and being able to create healthy manhood. So knowing that is becoming a bigger focus, including in VAWA, and that it's on the radar of Congress and Congresswomen like you, I'm so grateful for this and all the work that you do. So thank you for coming in and spending time, excuse me, with us tonight, and for all your efforts. We will make sure that we are encouraging our viewers to reach out to their senators and make sure that this gets reauthorized. So thank you so much, Congresswoman, for being with us.
Yes, thank you
Please
for being
do.
with us.
Thank you so very much. And please do. That's an important message that I wanted to leave, is that we're going to the Senate. We need everyone to call their senators, Republicans and Democrats, of course, to explain the value of HR 1620, helping not only women that are in society, but also incarcerated women. This bill is very comprehensive and much needed to pass in order to end the scourge of violence against women and to begin to cure and heal all that have been impacted. This is a survivor's message, and we want it heard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks. Oh, this is such important legislation, and I love how responsive it is, and how important it is to evolve these things. And so, pushing forward with and asking for these amendments to it, I think that's so important, rather than just going, "Oh, we're going to take the easy route and take what we already had." So I'm really
Right. Yeah, I mean, where we were the last time, as in terms of society, where we were the last time this was reauthorized is very different from
Mhm.
the country we are now. And sometimes it feels like we're not making any progress, but we've made enough progress that it's recognized that the bill was insufficient for
Mhm.
how we want to prevent and protect, and to lift people up who have been abused. So it's really encouraging to see this finally make it through the House, and now we'll just stay on it and hopefully see it
Yep.
through the Senate.
All those senators.
Yes, call your senators. We are going to take a quick break right now, and take a word from the Lincoln Project.
America is starting to breathe again. A decent man as president, a plan to protect us. It feels almost normal, but it's not. Republicans still will not admit that President Biden was legally elected, which means they don't believe in democracy. They believe an election is only legitimate if they win. That's not democracy. Their plan? Pass voter suppression bills to block minorities from voting, take back Congress, impeach President Biden. We refuse. We refuse to accept the end of the American experiment. We refuse to allow anti-democratic autocrats to steal our country. We choose to fight, and we will not lose. Join us.
Democrats also refuse to support amendments to help women receive firearms safety training and self-defense courses to protect them against their abusers. Republicans have introduced amendments having to do with gun rights. If you want to help protect women, make sure women are gun owners and know how to use a gun properly in order to protect themselves.
Representative Lee mentioned during our interview with her that there had been a police officer in her area who had recently been killed going into a domestic violence situation where a gun was present. If police officers are in that kind of danger, the idea that we're going to arm women is just madness.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's the fact that it was even suggested on the floor is something that we should all pay attention to and be concerned about. Stay alert.
Yeah,
And
be alert for those little gifts to the NRA. We heard a lot from you folks and wanted to share some of what you have written in to us on this subject. So our first tweet comes from Lindy Lee. She writes, "How anyone could vote against the Violence Against Women Act is utterly beyond me. I bear a physical scar of domestic violence. I am not alone. My sisters are all around America. We don't need your sympathy. We need your votes and advocacy."
And we also heard from Susan Golding, who wrote to us on Facebook. She says, "How about we fire every single one of them and vote in people who aren't bought or owe anyone any favors? Our government is the problem."
And we also heard from Lisa Song, who reached out from Facebook with an astute observation noting they protect their guns instead of the women in their lives.
And President Joe Biden tweeted that writing and passing the Violence Against Women Act is one of the accomplishments of which I'm most proud. While we have made significant progress, there is still much work to do. I'm grateful the House voted to strengthen and renew the law, and I urge the Senate to do the same. So good to know that we have a president who is believes in protecting women instead of attacking women. It's so very important. Coming up, we have a guest who faced violence in her home and marriage and is now helping support others facing similar situations. We'll be right back after this message.
I'm calling because of the idiots in the Congress who voted against the Violence Against Women Act. And my question to them, especially those who have daughters or even have nieces, do they not think about them? Does their family not see them make these votes and wonder, oh my God, my dad doesn't want me protected? It just boggles my mind that it's not affecting them personally. But again, thank you for everything you do, and bless you guys, and I am forever a fan.
I love hearing from our viewers who speak a lot more sense than some of our Congress people.
Very true.
Our next guest and I actually first met at a fundraiser in LA for Knockout Abuse West, a nonprofit that raises money and awareness to help domestic violence survivors. She is an award-winning singer-songwriter, co-founder of cruelty-free cosmetics brand Double Down, whose charitable work through her foundation From Here to There includes providing makeovers for domestic violence survivors. She says, when a woman feels great about herself, she can conquer the world. Kristen Speller, thank you for being here. We're speaking.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here to speak as a domestic violence survivor of 12 years and on behalf of all of the victims who are going through emotional and physical abuse right as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Really, truly, because sharing our stories is how we grow, and giving back is really a part of that. Now, we all know that abuse thrives in silence. Why was it so important for you to speak up, and what do you hope people will gain from hearing your story?
Well, I think initially I stayed silent for many years because I felt as though, like anyone else, I was trying to make a marriage work under arduous circumstances and under any circumstances, truthfully. But what I found is that secrets keep you sick, and I probably should have spoken up sooner. I have a very loving family, so it wasn't for the fact that I wouldn't have been believed, but I think that there were so many issues in my home, be it financial, spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental, that you're just trying to survive day to day. And I was trying to keep my job in corporate America while being wounded. And so I had to use makeup as a tool to cover up my wounds in order to keep my job, as I was the only one working in my household.
Wow, what an amazingly strong woman you are, and survivors are. I think it's difficult sometimes for women and anyone who is a survivor to think of themselves that way, because they are experiencing abuse at the hands of someone else. But it takes so much strength. So bravo to you for what you've been able to do. One of the things that you mentioned was financial challenges when you were still in your relationship. Why are resources, particularly financial ones, so important for somebody who wants to be able to leave an abusive relationship?
Well, first of all, I think that with the survivors that we service in our community, they don't have access to their financial documents. And part of that was in my home. And I didn't know what was going on the side because everything was kept in secret. And oftentimes the perpetrators use this as a tool to not allow you to leave. And so that's abuse. And it's used under the most, just awful circumstances. And when you're looking at the financial model for most victims, they're not the breadwinners in the household. We have met with a plethora of survivors, and the more and more we hear their stories is that, their perpetrator wouldn't let them work. They couldn't leave the house. They had to take care of the children. in my case, I was the financial breadwinner. So for me, it was so important for me to keep my job because I knew that that would allow me to escape and get free. And eventually, that's exactly what happened. I had a very lucrative job as a hospital department administrator. And if it wasn't for that job and in the vicinity where I worked, I wouldn't have escaped and gotten free.
So you mentioned trying to maintain a job in corporate America while also suffering abuse. Abuse is extremely challenging. I know that pain because I had to do the same thing. And it is what makes us very resilient, right? I was the main breadwinner as well. And you are a singer and songwriter, and I am a poet, comedian, and I actually got into comedy as a way to kind of help me heal from what I was going through. Can you talk about how your art, how writing, singing has helped you heal?
Certainly, it has been the one driving force in my life. And as a matter of fact, when I was going through domestic violence and I had escaped, my ex husband oftentimes was trying to text me, still trying to harass me. And there was one night where my sister stayed on the phone with him for 4 hours. And in that time, I wrote my first commercially released single called Bruised. My first album is all about freedom from domestic violence, and it's truly saved my life. And then once I saved myself, my husband saved my life, and he is my producer. And we released a song, an anthem called Phoenix Rising Up, because I didn't want to stay in the darkness. I don't think that being in a dark place is truly beneficial. And for me, I feel as though I'm a light and I'm a phoenix who rises up. So it was sort of taking the construct of darkness and elevating that into the light to become a phoenix rising up and rise through the ashes and go through the fire, because there are many, many women who are trying to get to this place right now. And thankfully, I not only have survived, but I thrive. So it's been a saving grace in my life. And then through the art of cosmetics, we're able to serve our domestic violence survivors through our Glam Up program, where we provide clean cosmetics and give access to clean cosmetics to our survivors here in Los Angeles.
I'm really glad that both you and Maya have mentioned being in a profession where the expectation is that this sort of thing isn't happening to you, and you need to hold it together and be able to go on with your work. And I was in a similar situation, as so many women are. And I have a very vivid recollection of going back to our marital home with a civil standby, a police officer escorting me so I could pick up an item, and my then separated husband yelling out, does this, you really think she's abused? Does this look like a place that an abused woman would live? And that stereotype that it is only a certain type of woman that is abused. It doesn't play favorites. Domestic abuse hits all of us. Can you talk to us a little bit about the range of different women who you've worked with and how you processed just that internally, that this isn't saying something negative about you to say that you are a survivor, that the harm was caused by someone else. It is not your fault.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your story as well, and Maya as well. I can say this, that there are so many avenues to this, and you have to navigate and pivot through so much. And I think that oftentimes the blame is always on us. We're constantly being blamed. And we have to get out of that blame mentality. I think that the survivors that we work with and that we service, it's a gamut from women who have their own jobs to women who have no jobs, from women who are multimillionaires to unhoused sisters on the streets of Los Angeles. There are so many women that have such different circumstances. And personally, for me, I remember when I had to tell my executive administration what I was going through and that I was living in hiding because my ex showed up to my job. And I remember one person said, "Well, you're so pretty. I can't believe you would be abused." And I thought to myself, well, first of all, I can't believe that that is being said to me, number one. And number two, in my mind, I said, wow, the fact that someone even thinks that, that's the problem. The problem is the social stigma of how we're viewed in America, what our faces look like, what our body types look like, what our race is. And when you start to really deconstruct the construct, that's where the work needs to be done. I always say this, domestic violence is still a social stigma, and we don't talk about it as publicly as we should. A lot of people do not want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. I have continued to use my voice once I came out to be really public about this, because we have survivors in our Double Down Cosmetics community and also From Here to There community who have never gone public. Some of them are still in the homes with their perpetrator. And so how do we give them access to try to survive? How do we help them escape? And it's such a myriad of emotions for every survivor. And really, it's running the gamut from here to there. That's why we named our nonprofit From Here to There, because we take our survivors from here to there. I certainly don't have all the answers, but like we're sharing tonight, we're all using our voices because we know that the voice of survivors needs to be heard. We need to make sure that we are protected. We shouldn't be in a situation where we say, oh, do you know how to use a gun? Which I do. I actually learned how to use a gun 12 years ago because I didn't really know what was happening, and I wanted to protect and defend myself because I knew that I was being stalked. But we shouldn't have to do that. And again, when you take a look at legislation, when you take a look at the communities that we serve, when you take a look at the different states, how can we merge all of this together? How can we fight for every single victim and every single survivor that needs to survive? These are our lives that we're talking about. And I don't take that lightly. My husband doesn't take that lightly. My husband has been a champion in this community. He has been a real man that has stood up for domestic violence, and we need everybody's help. A lot of people say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, my quote is that it takes a community to sustain an adult.
That is, yes. I was like, put that on a tweet. I love that. Put it on a journal, on a graphic. Yes, it does take a community to sustain an adult. Absolutely love what you're talking about as far as giving back. I've found it is definitely a part of the healing process, I'm sure, for all of us. And I think it's so important for women who are still suffering to see that there is a way out and that there is happiness and strength and resilience that comes after victimhood, that is part of the survivorship and the thriving story. And so I am so grateful that you are here to demonstrate that and that you continue to give back. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kristen.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for having me. It was such an honor to meet you last year. You're so talented, and to be in the same space of survivorship with you is truly an honor, because we know the work that it takes as survivors. And I'm truly grateful to be able to share my story tonight with all of you.
Thank you.
Kristen, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and please check out Kristen's organization, From Here to There. A lot of really cool programs that they've put together to help out survivors and also the unhoused. Coming up, we are going to tell you who we have picked for this week's OFFS nominees. And we have a brand new game this week called Republicans Against Democracy. It's a political trivia game, so stay tuned.
The Violence Against Women Act needs to be passed so that Trump and the other creeps like him stop putting women and Asians and anybody that isn't an ass-kissing Trump supporter in danger. I think the Republicans need to get their shit together and start acting like they care about their constituents.
The victims of race-based violence and their families deserve justice. And as the case, what we're talking about here with the tragedy, what we just saw occur in Atlanta, Georgia. I would also suggest that the victims of cartels moving illegal aliens deserve justice. The American citizens in South Texas that are getting absolutely decimated by what's happening at our southern border deserve justice. The victims of rioting and looting in the streets last week, businesses closed, burned last summer, deserve justice. We believe in justice. Right? There's old sayings in Texas about, find all the rope in Texas and get a tall oak tree. We take justice very seriously, and we ought to do that.
Your president and your party and your colleagues can talk about issues with any other country that you want, but you don't have to do it by putting a bullseye on the back of Asian Americans across this country, on our grandparents, on our kids. This hearing was to address the hurt and pain of our community and to find solutions, and we will not let you take our voice away from us.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that when you hear him say it out loud, and you see the effect that his words have on people, to be an elected official and to say something so irresponsible like that, of course people are frustrated. Of course people are crying and angry, because it's not okay, and it puts people in danger. As she said, it puts people in danger.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And to see an elected person decide that they're going to seize the horror of what happened as an opportunity to grandstand and try to put their agenda forward, instead of being compassionate and actually having a heart and thinking for a moment about what the Asian American community has been going through. It is so disgraceful. It's, occasionally we have to just try to take a step back and laugh a little, because there is so much awfulness out there. And, guys like Chip, they're why
the
we
ones that make you say it.
Yep.
Yep, they're the ones that make you say, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And each week we take a little time to shine a spotlight on them. Their actions have exceeded our expectations, and they've truly outdone themselves in being deceitful, dishonest, and anti-democratic. So we give them an award for it. It's our "Oh, for fuck's sake" award, and it's our way of saying, we see you, you're horrible. Folks, here are this week's nominees.
Well, it's not often that you hear a sitting member of Congress share his pro-lynching views during a public hearing. And as we saw, enter Texas Congressman Chip Roy, who not only glorified lynch mobs as an important element of criminal justice, he doubled and then tripled down when he was challenged on them. How did lynching even come up at this hearing? Well, if you're Chip, you think a hearing to address discrimination and violence against Asian Americans a few days after 6 Asian American women were shot and killed is your opportunity to defend discrimination against Asians as an exercise of free speech, to then blame the Chinese again for the pandemic and psychotically reminisce about the good old days when mobs, ropes, and tall trees meant criminal justice was served. For the record, lynching was the antithesis of justice.
Truly. Another overachiever in our group of nominees, Matt Rootin' for Putin Gates, is back on the map in Russia this time. He said on Fox with a smirk that a Putin-Biden debate wouldn't end like Rocky IV. So this seditionist is not just on the wrong side of history, he's also on the wrong side of the ring, rooting for Putin. Get this guy some pom-poms and get him out of Congress. When's the last time a sitting member of the U.S. Congress was rooting for an authoritarian Russian menace to show up a U.S. president? Or either party? Oh, never, you say? Yeah, never.
Yeah, it's all these through the looking glass moments. Like, how are we even having the opportunity to nominate people who say, how is this stuff being said out loud or even thought in the first place? But anyway, our final nominee of the evening, she's back. You knew she would be. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene. When Marge isn't being suspended from Twitter, she's using her platform to keep her followers angry and afraid, tweeting deranged missives like, "We are being invaded and Joe Biden invited them all," and that police are, quote, on Biden's hit list. Her answer to violence in America, especially against women, more guns. Rather than preventing domestic abusers from owning guns, her answer is to arm more women. Domestic violence shootouts with our children in the crossfire, that's a great plan, Marge. 72 Democrats have supported a resolution to expel her from Congress. We should be so lucky.
Yes, and you can still vote in the OFFS poll along with thousands of other people who have already weighed in. Like JAC, who wrote, "Remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene was not really elected. She ran against no one." This is a true sad fact. And then also Killer Pinky says, "It's a tough one between gaslighting Gates, malignant Marjorie, and racist Roy. They are all heinous, defective idiots." The poll is live on our Twitter at LPTV. We'll announce the winner of the losers at the end of the show. But up next, we are playing our fun trivia game, Republicans Against Democracy.
Everybody is very disturbed about the events of last Wednesday, and they want to do something.
More than a dozen Fortune 500 companies have suspended all political donations.
This bill is Jim Crow with a suit and tie.
Republicans in Georgia are trying to make it harder to vote.
Business isn't half pragmatic in a moment. It reacts very quickly.
Money is the oxygen in American politics.
And because it truly does seem to be Republicans against democracy, we've created a new game that we are kicking off this week, where one of our Lincoln Project viewers plays along for bragging rights and, better still, new Lincoln Project gear.
So our first contestant, hello, Kamini. Welcome to the first edition of Republicans Against Democracy. We are so excited.
Thank you. Me too. I'm with it. It's all good.
Yeah. Hey, Kamini. Yes. We're so glad you're here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Are you? You are Jersey?
I live in Jersey. I live in Jersey City, New Jersey. So I've just been horrified at looking at all this voter suppression going on in the southern and midwestern areas. I've never had to wait online to vote more than like 45 minutes my entire life as a New York, New Jersey resident. And I can't even fathom the stuff that they're putting people through. It outrages me. So we got to do something.
It is. And you left us a voicemail. That's how we found you, right? You left us a voicemail.
Yeah, I did, about the voter suppression deal, because I get insulted a little bit because I feel like they're insulting people's intelligence. Okay, so you change the laws. So we'll just learn the new laws. It's not like people are ignorant. You know what I'm saying? If you make us jump through a little hoop and then walk to the left or skip to the right, okay, we'll do that. Whatever it is, we're still going to vote.
Yeah.
Unless you, like I said, the dogs and the hoses, and we still voted anyway. So just do whatever changes you're going to do. And I mean, I do hope that HR 1 passes. But at the same time, I know that if it doesn't, because I have no faith in the Republicans, they're like gobstoppers these days. They don't want anything good. They won't lead. They don't follow. They just get in the way. So, you know, I have little hope that it might pass, but I do have hope in American spirit. You make things harder for people when they're right, they're just going to want to do it even more. The backlash is going to be like they're going to get even more fierce and determined to do it. So bring it on.
Bring it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way in Georgia, and we saw what happened there. I mean, they tried like hell to keep people from voting, and Georgia flipped blue. So, you know, they're playing a losing game. You are not. We have 3 questions for you tonight. I'm really excited to be playing this game with you. Are you ready for the first one?
Bring it.
All right. The first category this evening is baseless information. And your question is, which member of Congress dismissed climate change, claiming that Greenland got its name because when it was named, it was green? Was it Representative Louis Gohmert of Texas, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, or Representative Mo Brooks of Alabama?
I'm going to go with the first guy.
Oh.
No. I kind of missed that one. I missed that one.
Yeah,
they say a lot of outlandish things. Was it Mo Brooks?
It was actually Ron Johnson. I failed science class, Ron Johnson. Yes, he actually said, you know, there's a reason Greenland was called Greenland. It was actually green at one point in time. And it's been, you know, since it's a whole lot wider now. So we've experienced climate change throughout, you know, just a bunch of nonsense. And
This is the same guy that Ron Johnson that just said that he would have been afraid if it was BLM and Antifa, but he wasn't afraid because they look like him. I mean,
same dummy dum
how
dum.
homogenic is that? I know him, but I didn't expect he would be that, you know, over the edge.
Oh, he is over the top.
It's tough to choose from those 3.
How do these people get elected? Who is voting for these people?
I know.
That's the next. We'll have to have that question. We'll have to add that. Who is voting? Yes, we have to understand.
These people.
All right. Yes, exactly. Ready for your next?
I understand if you want to be on the far right, but at least could they be like smart? You know, but then if they were actually smart, they might actually be more of a threat. They might actually be more of a threat if they were intelligent and smart and woke on things. So,
well, I think they're slowly revealing themselves, and we're all paying attention. So I think that's good. Your next category, the next card is dictators say what? This past week, what authoritarian strongman challenged President Joe Biden to a no-prep debate? Was it A, Trump's North Korean BFF and dictator Kim Jong-un? B, Kentucky's senior senator and dethroned majority leader Mitch McConnell? Or C, Russian oligarch collector and shirtless equestrian Vladimir Putin?
It would have to be puny Putin.
Yes, you are right.
As if
I
your
like that
words
moniker.
are busy. You know, I was upset. I was like, as if our busy president is worth, you know, time to go and talk to you. Okay, you're not worth his time. He's busy. I hear a lot of people saying, why is Biden not doing this? And you see, he ends his news conference. He's like, what do you want to know? Okay, that's it. This is what's going on. Here's the deal. I got to go. And they're yelling questions like, I got to go. I'm busy. He's busy.
And he's not busy watching television. He's not flipping
on Twitter.
Channels.
On Twitter. He's actually busy working.
He's doing stuff. Yeah. We're just not used to it anymore, I guess.
No.
Absolutely. So Russian President and Republican puppet master Vladimir Putin was the answer. And, you know, Matt Gaetz, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and the whole sedition band couldn't wait to warm up their pipes and sing the murderous Russian leader's praises, because why wouldn't you love a guy who is currently imprisoning his political rival, Alexei Navalny, for the crime of refusing to die when Putin attempted to kill him? How dare he? Yeah.
So right. So right. Well, you just mentioned some of my, I have a panoply of, like, I call them Batman villains. And I've been giving him little pet names like Snake-Eyed Getz, and, Mackin Marjorie Green, and then we have Lauren, Bimbo, and they all have like, their personalities are like these extreme Batman villain type of personality. You know what I'm saying? So, sometimes when I look at them, they just look so mean. It's like, I just think of Batman and all that pow, boom, whack kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're so outlandish that if someone were to describe them, someone would say, oh, no, that's not realistic. That's too crazy. That villain's too out there. And it's like, oh, no, that's our reality now. Yeah.
That's right. He's a congressional member. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in Congress.
Tone it down to make it realistic. All right, here's your final category: corporate accountability. This U.S. company can't find its way to permanently cutting off its political donations to members of Congress who voted to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election. Was it AT&T, T-Mobile, Cigna, or Intel? We're going to give you one more choice. E, all of the above.
Well, I do know that we recently caught AT&T being hypocritical because they acted as if, and then they were caught still doing campaign contributions. So I'm going to go with AT&T because that's what I've heard recently, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was all of the above.
Ding, 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 ding. We're not surprised. Correctly not surprised. It is all of the above. And unfortunately, so many, many, many more. Apparently, we're not going to be able to use phones or internet or anything anymore. We're just going to have to pass note cards around.
I know. It's ridiculous, and I really do think that boycotting these people that support seditionists and voter suppression activity, the Congress people and the representatives that are not, everybody should be on board with these basic things, but there is a very weird game being played right now in America. And it is, the minority group is trying to jerry-rig things so that our voices are not heard, because that's the only way they can win. It's a numbers game. And it's upsetting to me, but at the same time, I do have hope in my America because there were 7 million more of us that feel like me that showed up last year. Because I was a little worried. Yes. He was talking about cheating so much. I thought he might be the cheater because he is a cheater. And I know he knew people. I was like, well, maybe he'll cheat us out of the election.
He's projecting. Yeah, he's projecting.
Okay, we actually won. All that stuff I was doing, running around, voter suppression, and voter stuff in the neighborhood. Actually did a boots on the ground desperate skill, and we won. And we didn't just get the presidency, we actually got control of the ship. So, it really restored my faith that, I am a real American, and there are many other real Americans out there like me. And thank God there were 7 million more of us that made things go the right way this time. But, we really have to watch this. They're throwing bowling balls at us now. Knives out, as I tell my friends. The Republicans have knives out, man. They have no shame about it. Knives out.
Yeah, but we're dodging the bowling balls, the knives, all of that. We are too quick for them. So thank you for playing with us and for being such a good support.
I'm so excited to be down with you guys. I love you, Lincoln Project. You're my purple Republicans. So keep on rocking it, okay? Speak truth to power and never back down.
Excellent. So
thank you. Voicemail.
Yes, please do.
I will.
Awesome.
I'm always going to have something to say. So,
Good.
My family doesn't like to listen to me so much, but I know you guys are always open. So.
We do. Yes. We value your voice. We're sending you some LP gear, including our new America is Great Again hat. So our gear shop and all the great LP gear is now available. It's fully stocked. It can be found at lincolnproject.us. So thanks for playing with us.
All right, cool. All right, ladies. Keep it up. Peace.
Take it easy.
Night. That was fun.
That was fun. She's great.
Yeah.
I keep saying this. Our viewers are so incredibly informed.
Funny.
And funny and salty. And I love it.
I love every bit of it. Like the comments, the comments in the, on the live chat on YouTube, on Facebook, they're hilarious. So can't wait to play that again.
The show wraps and I go back, I don't watch because I want to see us. I watch because I want to read the comments that have come in during the show because y'all are hilarious. Please do keep that coming.
Yes.
And now it is time to name the winner of this week's Oh For Fuck's Sake Award, given each week to the most inane, offensive, and dangerous character in politics. Our nominees this week were Marjorie Taylor, How Is She Still in Congress Green? Matt Gaetz, and Chip Roy. For those who didn't win, remember, it's a dishonor just to be nominated.
Those are the facts. And the winner of the losers is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again. Wow. If you think more guns are the solution, then you're a shitty problem solver. Where would we even keep all these guns? Maybe instead of a sweet 16, girls can have a sweet AR-15. And why wait? Let's arm the little ones. We'll call it SWATlers. Tactical training for toddlers. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the distraction, the obstructionist, the classless clown. In fact, I'm going to rename her. She's now Marjorie Taylor Gangrene. Time to cut her out of Congress before she infects the others. Congrats, or something.
Yeah, well, she's a two-time winner, so we know Marge is never going to change, but the rest of us can work together to push forward the change that we all really need. We want to share with you just a few things that you can do. Call your congresspeople, call your senators about the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act and push them to vote against voter suppression bills in all those states that they're being introduced right now, especially Georgia in the next few days. Donate. Please, more than ever, your local shelters really need your support. There has been a huge uptick in domestic violence during the pandemic. If you're able to donate money, if you can donate supplies to shelters, please check out your local shelter and find out what they might need.
Yep. Community, we need your support. And don't miss the breakdown tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific with Tara Setmayer and Rick Wilson, where their guest will be Professor of Political Science of UCLA, Lynn Vavrick. The Lincoln Project podcast is back and better than ever with LP's Reed Galen hosting.
There are a lot of Republicans who do not understand the depth to which they have been compromised by not only their vote to overturn the election and to disenfranchise tens of millions of African Americans, but also by their clear alliance with the people who were kicking those doors down and beating those cops on the 6th. It's going to have a political repercussion where it's going to be harder for Republicans to go into a town hall Zoom, as we do in this day and age, and nod and wink and go, well, I'm not one of those Republicans. Well, if you're one of the 147, you are.
It's informative and fun. I listen while I'm running errands, also while I'm doing crunches, working out. I'm constantly listening to the podcast. You can subscribe and listen to the latest episode of the Lincoln Project podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found.
And please reach out to us with your thoughts, your ideas, whatever it is you have to share. We want to hear it. Tweet us at #We'reSpeaking. You can leave us voicemails, text, reach out on Facebook. We really do read everything that you guys send us. It is a blast for us to do, and it also lets us kind of keep a finger on the pulse of what is really important to you. So please keep all of that coming. And we will be back with you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific on LPTV, the Lincoln Project's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
And you're definitely going to want to tune in because next week's show, in many ways, feels long overdue. We're talking about white supremacy. It's the 800-pound gorilla Dr. McLaurin spoke about when we had her on the show. White supremacy has gone mainstream, and it's woven throughout the GOP's strategy to try and regain power. It's a short-sighted strategy, and it won't work, but we have to ask ourselves how we got here. So be sure to tune in next week.
Looking forward to be back here with you next Wednesday. Have a great night.
Yes, have a good night.